Rain had poured relentlessly for 3 days over Riverbrook, a quaint agricultural hamlet cradled amid undulating slopes and the typically tranquil Mercer River. On this specific dawn, the heavens unleashed with intensified wrath, converting dusty paths into sludgy torrents and pastures into shallow ponds. Most residents sheltered in their dwellings, praying the tempest would subside before the harvest season. Jason Miller, a 24-year-old with roughened palms and prematurely aged skin, stood by the window of his family's humble farmhouse. The wooden frame, long past due for mending, groaned under the wind's pressure. Through the rain-streaked pane, he observed the river surging past its banks, creeping nearer to the lane linking their hamlet to the highway. "It's worsening," his mother remarked, setting a chipped mug of coffee on the sill beside him. "Your father would have already been out there, inspecting the Henderson property." Jason nodded, recalling how his late father was always the first to aid during deluges. Since his death 2 years prior, Jason had shouldered not only their faltering farm's burdens, but also his father's role as the hamlet's unofficial crisis responder. "I'll take the truck and survey the road," he declared, snatching his raincoat from the peg by the door. Its cuffs were tattered, yet it remained sufficiently waterproof for the job. The aged pickup roared to life, its wipers struggling to match the deluge's pace. Jason navigated cautiously along the primary road, noting where water had rendered crossing perilous. As he neared the riverbend where the path dipped before climbing toward the highway, he spotted something that forced him to jam the brakes. A black SUV, evidently not local, was stranded in the swiftly rising flood. Its headlights pierced faintly through the gray veil of rain, and Jason discerned a figure inside, struggling to force open the driver's door against the current. Without pause, he maneuvered his truck to the highest terrain nearby and seized the wooden grip of a shovel. From the truck bed, it wasn't perfect, but it could offer leverage or stability in the rushing tide. Jason waded into the deluge, sensing the current's forceful tug against his legs. The woman in the SUV glanced up as he neared, her eyes wide with terror. Her dark hair clung to her face, and her pale dress was already drenched. She'd managed to pry the door slightly, but the water's pressure kept her confined in the luxury vehicle, now a potential steel tomb. "Hold on," Jason shouted over the water's roar and rain's din. "I'm here to get you out." He braced himself against the current, pressing his weight against the door while using the shovel's handle for extra support. The door yielded enough for the woman to slip through. She stumbled into the waist-deep water with a gasp, and Jason grabbed her arm, steadying her against the torrent threatening to sweep them away. "We need to move now," he said firmly yet calmly. The water's still rising. Together, they battled through the flood toward safer ground, Jason using the shovel to probe for hidden gullies or debris. The woman tripped once, briefly submerging before Jason hauled her up, gripping her tightly as they pushed to safety. When they reached his truck, both were trembling and exhausted. Jason helped her into the passenger seat and turned the heater to its maximum. Though it was feeble in the old vehicle, "Thank you," she said, teeth chattering. "I think you just saved my life." Jason shrugged, uneasy with the praise. "Anyone would have done it." "I'm Jason Miller, Olivia Reed," she replied, wringing water from her hair. "I was heading to High Point Resort when my GPS rerouted me due to the storm. I didn't know the road would be flooded." Jason nodded. The upscale resort on the mountainside was a world apart from Riverbrook, a retreat for affluent visitors who seldom ventured into the hamlet except for picturesque snapshots. "You're far from the resort," he said, shifting the truck into gear. "But you can dry off at our house, and I'll get you to the highway once the water drops a bit." Over the next few hours, as the rain gradually eased, Olivia sat at the Miller's kitchen table, wrapped in one of Jason's mother's handcrafted quilts. She sipped warm tea and listened as Jason described how the hamlet often faced flooding, how they supported one another, and how they always rebuilt despite scarce resources. "The county promised flood defenses 3 years ago," he explained, "but the funds vanished between approval and execution." Olivia posed thoughtful questions, showing sincere curiosity about the hamlet's struggles. Before departing, she thanked Jason and his mother warmly, pressing her business card into his hand. "If you ever need anything," she said, please, contact me." Jason tucked the card away politely, but doubted he'd use it. People from Olivia's world often made such gestures in moments of heartfelt gratitude, but rarely followed through once back in their usual lives. 3 months later, the flood damage had been mended as much as possible with the limited means available. Jason had nearly forgotten the woman he'd rescued from the rising waters. When a convoy of trucks rolled into Riverbrook one morning, workers in uniforms began unloading gear near the river, setting up surveying instruments and marking zones along the banks. Jason approached, wary of what development might be intruding on their hamlet now. "Excuse me," he called to a man who seemed in charge. "What's going on here?" "Flood Control Initiative," the man replied, handing Jason a business card, fully funded by Reed Environmental Solutions. "We're installing cutting-edge water management systems for the entire Mercer River basin, starting with Riverbrook." Jason stared at the card, realization dawning. Reed Environmental Solutions, Olivia Reed. The card was nearly identical to the one still in his dresser drawer, except this one named her as Olivia Reed, CEO and founder. Later that afternoon, a familiar black SUV pulled up to the Miller farmhouse. Olivia stepped out, not in a soaked designer gown, but in practical jeans and a plain blouse. She smiled as Jason walked out to greet her. "You never called," she said simply. "I didn't know you were." He gestured vaguely. "A billionaire. Environmental engineer." She laughed softly. "Most people don't. They just see the wealth." She explained how she'd built her company, creating sustainable flood control systems for at-risk communities worldwide. How she'd been studying the Mercer River basin for potential projects when the storm struck. How his rescue had given her first-hand insight into the hamlet's challenges. "You showed me something that day," she said, gazing over the fields toward the river. "Not just the flood risk, but how a community unites. My company focuses on technical fixes. But you reminded me why this work matters." Jason studied her face, seeing not a rich outsider but a person with purpose. "So this project isn't charity because I pulled you from a flood." Olivia shook her head. "It's an investment in a community that deserves protection. Though I admit, I never forgot what you did that day." She paused, a gentle smile crossing her face. "Sometimes we need reminders of what truly matters. You did that for me." In the months that followed, Jason collaborated with Olivia's team, offering local expertise to the flood control project. The barriers were crafted to blend with the natural landscape, safeguarding the hamlet while preserving its charm. Jason discovered a knack for environmental planning, a talent he might never have uncovered without Olivia's return. What began as a rescue amid a flash flood slowly evolved into something neither could have foreseen: a partnership rooted in mutual respect, shared purpose, and the realization that sometimes the most vital connections are forged in life's most treacherous currents.